Dear members, dear guests, and distinguished participants, welcome and thank you for joining us for the DEİK EU talks on post-COVID opportunities in textile sector. And thank you, of course, to our distinguished speakers for making the time to join us today. As countries are fighting the economic consequences of COVID-19, following the relative flattening of the epidemic curve, businesses face challenging questions. These include how we can navigate the opportunities to rebound from the crisis, what the future entails, and how we can improve future resilience against the changing dynamics of global trade. So for this very reason, I think it is time to focus opportunities and potentials rather than problems we face during this unprecedented period. Obviously, in Europe also, businesses are trying to resume their activities. So we are in a very important period right now. So textile is a great example in this context as a promising sector to increase cooperation between Turkey and in the broader context with the EU. It is a very, very important industry in Turkish economy. We as DEİK thought that discussing all this COVID-19 problems and the reopening of the businesses and the possible potentials within the context of textile industry will be very useful. So this includes, of course, reaping the benefits of the changing supply chains while securing them is also an issue we should keep in mind. So we should discuss about this, and such opportunities also include the need for further integration in innovation, sustainability, as well as trade and industry strategies. Now that also EU is Green Deal and other digitalization issues, so integration of textile industry into these subjects is very important. Today we are hosting all these distinguished guests. Are really very prominent representatives of the sector from different backgrounds. First, I would like to introduce Mr. Dirk Wantigem. He's a Director General at European Apparel and Textile Confederation, Eurotex. Represents some 171,000 companies with a turnover of 178 billion, employing 1.7 million workers in the EU. So it's a big responsibility. Our second panelist is Mr. Ahmet Öksüz, Chairperson of Istanbul Textile and Raw Materials Exporters Association, İLİşkiler. So İLİşkiler is one of the most important associations of apparel sector in Turkey, representing more than 9,000 exporters who realize 12% of Turkey's total export, amounting $17 billion. Our third panelist is Mr. Alex Zucchi, participating from Italy. He is the president of Association of Italian Textile Machinery Manufacturers. ACIMIT is a non-profit entity aiming to support Italian textile machinery sector through the most updated and innovative means. And our last speaker is Mr. Süleyman Orakçıoğlu, Chairperson of Orca Holding. Mr. Orakçıoğlu leads Turkey's renowned brands Damat, Twin, DS, Damat, with their ever-increasing export and new stores in Europe. And they are continuously opening new stores mainly in Italy and Spain. I believe that with these distinguished speakers, we will have the chance to discuss textile sector from every perspective, including manufacturers from raw materials to finished goods, exporters, machinery manufacturers, and sector representatives with the contribution of our distinguished speakers. We have very valuable also participants. They can also comment and ask questions when we finish the presentations. Now, if I may, I would like like to make some also small remarks, and then afterwards I will leave the floor to our panelists to share their experience and insight. As a business person also, and as part of the Turkish-Italian Business Council, I believe that textile is one of backbone sectors of Turkish economy. It was the first sector that was aligned with customs union regulations in Turkey. So if we speak today about the Turkish harmonization with EU and integration Turkish economy with EU, I think we have to give the credit to Turkish textile industry as well, because since then Turkey's textile exporters have increased almost ninefold, and the sector further integrated with the value chains in Europe successfully and led to increase in competitiveness as well. So its contribution to country's economy is not limited to manufacturing export, but also on employment. In Turkey, employment in this sector exceeded 1 million people in 2020. If I'm not mistaken, so we have representatives from Turkey, they can also comment more, but if I'm not mistaken, it is almost 500,000 in Italy, and Europe it employs 1.7 million in textile industry. So Turkey is a big textile country. Italy leading the way, and Turkey is gaining further experience. Textile is also a sector with a huge opportunity for creating high-end brand values together with design capabilities and technological advancement. We know that Italian companies have an appetite towards Turkey, and most of them also have invested in many years ago. Despite these very positive contributions, it was one of the most hit sectors by COVID-19 due to the lockdowns and decrease in demand. So in the first days of the pandemic, we have seen that manufacturers in textile are left with huge stocks due to the cancellation of orders by the biggest retailers. I believe our speakers will dive deeper into this, but we had many comments on this from our textile industry representatives. So they will share their experience in terms of how trade between Turkey and EU has been affected. We have also witnessed the dependence and vulnerability of supply chains, and textile, of course, is no exception to this. So as we are familiar with the advantages of highly integrated global supply chain, there are certainly drawbacks of it. In this sense, it would be useful to discuss the alternative to this. So on supply chains, we could also discuss the tendency to shift in trade blocks. The delocalization and reshoring are the very important jargons that we all talk about nowadays. And of course, this delocalization and reshoring of investments in textile sectors are important subject to discuss. How can Turkey, for example, with its proximity and existing integration in supply chain mechanisms, integrate closer with Italy and Europe? So what are the new possibilities that we can offer from both sides? And that being said, further cooperation and integration requires also policy alignment at different levels. For instance, the EU Green Deal, as I mentioned before, that aims to make Europe first climate neutral continent, and the industrial strategy with a specific focus to digitalization will have major effects on Turkish businesses and their manufacturing models. This was also the case when we first started to operate in the customs union framework. For example, many foreign companies came to Turkey to regulate Turkish textile industry. Therefore, this will bring opportunities as well as, I believe, challenges for companies and trade between Turkey and Italy and the EU. So how should business and specifically the SMEs adapt to these changes? as competitiveness in textile industry is highly related to design. Also, design capabilities and branding are important issues. What could be the ways to increase their in these subjects, and what could be the further cooperation between Italy and Turkey and the European companies in terms of design and branding? And last but not least, with COVID-19 accelerator effect in e-commerce and digitalization, the need for innovative models in a sector like textile require greater effort. So Turkey is working with many important retailers, but now the change with the low touch economy concept, the issue is changing. So therefore, how we can adapt to this new normal, and I wonder where Turkey and Italy stand regarding digitalization and technology adaptation in post-COVID-19 world and the opportunities ahead of us. So now, without further ado, I think I would like to leave the floor to our distinguished speakers who will be providing important insights into these questions. So I would like to start, as I mentioned before, with the order, and starting from Mr. Van Tighem, that is representing Eurotext. So thank you for joining us, Mr. Van Tighem, and we are really looking forward to hear your comments and expertise on this subject. We know that you are very familiar with Turkey, as we discussed before, and you were also representing Turkey, and you have good relations with TOBB and with TİM, and with many businesses in Turkey. So floor is yours, and we would like to hear your comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your kind introduction, and thank you to DEİK for inviting me to join this panel. I'm very happy to see that DEİK is beyond the general events that you organize, is also putting some sector-specific focus on the textile and clothing industry. That's very much appreciated. For Eurotext, relations with Turkey are obviously very important. Just to mention that in our membership, we have 4 members coming from Turkey. So we have İTKİP, we also have the employers, the Turkish textile employers, and the TGSD Clothing Manufacturers Association. So Turkey, through these 4 members, is very involved, is very much engaged in the activities of Eurotext. And I'm very grateful for their kind of active involvement in our work, in our policy work here in Brussels. As you mentioned already, Chair, EU-Turkey trade relations in the textile sector are very important. I don't need to make long statements on that. We have a total trade volume which is now more than 15 billion euro and growing. So it's clear that the relation between EU and Turkey in the textile sector can only grow, can only prosper, and should be a win-win situation for both sides. So, making a few comments on the COVID-19 crisis from that European perspective, just sharing a few maybe figures with you. We have done some surveys. Some of our members have carried out some surveys trying to measure the impact of the crisis. Obviously, the situation is quite dramatic, and we have figures minus 50%, minus 70, 80% of sales and turnover. So this is never seen before in terms of economic impact of the crisis. We made an estimate, just to give you one figure, we made an estimate for the entire industry, including the Turkish sector. And we think that in 2020, we will face a drop in turnover and sales for the entire sector of 50 billion euro. This is massive. This is minus 30% for the entire year. So the impact is huge, both in short term, but also in the longer term. So what we as Eurotex try to do here in Brussels, that is our task, is obviously discuss and negotiate with the European authorities, the Commission, Parliament, etc., to see what kind of solutions, what kind of measures can be developed to support the industry. And if I say the industry, that includes not just EU, but also the Turkish colleagues, which, as I said, are member of Eurotex. And we've been putting on the table a number of proposals. On the one hand, short-term solutions. On the other hand, more long-term structural solutions or proposals. In the short term, it's obviously about liquidity. It's about developing access to finance for the companies, because we hear from our membership, and this applies again both in Turkey and EU, that many companies face cash flow problems. So we are trying to negotiate and try to convince the Commission, European Investment Bank, to develop credit lines that would offer in the short term cash support that allows companies to survive in the short term. We are of course also pushing very much to restore the demands for the industry. You know that very well, I think, everybody. The quicker that the demand can pick up, the better for companies. And there again, the short-term prospects are unfortunately not so promising, even though we are, let's say, we are moving out of the, let's say, quarantine situation. We hear that the demand, the pickup in the demand is quite slow, but still this is important. And thirdly, we also in the short term try to ensure that the markets can operate in an open and fluid way. So in other words, that we do not have these national borders, these national barriers, which have appeared certainly in the beginning of the crisis. So these are some of the more kind of short-term measures that we try to put on the table, which we hope will help to save, secure the existence, the continuation of the sector. At the same time, we are developing a more, I would say, long-term strategy. So try to think more structurally, how can we get out of this crisis and how can we make sure that the textile and clothing industry can regain competitiveness. And there we have a number of, let's say, proposals, a number of projects, if you want, that we are putting on the table. It's clear that the sector needs to invest very much in innovation and digitalization. And this is very much in line with what the European Commission is putting on the table as well. We need to work on attracting skills, young talent into the industry. You mentioned the European Green Deal, and indeed the textile and clothing sector is very much, if you want, a target for the European Commission. So we are reflecting how can we make the industry more sustainable, more circular, and I think we think there are a number of solutions that we can put on the table. And so again, as part of our long-term strategy, we are putting proposals on the table in a proactive way, so to make sure that this green move can actually become a source of competitiveness instead of a burden or an additional cost to the companies. And again, we have a number of proposals around circular strategy, around recycling, that we are discussing with the Commission. Of course, we are also discussing and emphasizing the importance to have open markets, to maintain open markets within the European Union, but beyond that, in the customs union with Turkey, in the larger, what we call pan-Euro-Mediterranean region, and even more globally. So I think we have to be careful that this crisis is not I would say, leading to increased protectionism. Instead, that we maintain open markets to the benefit of all the industry. At the same time, of course, insist that all the players on these markets operate, I would say, in a level playing field. So operate while respecting the same conditions, the same criteria that we operate in a, as we say, a free market, but at the same time also a fair market. So there are a number of, as I said, ideas and proposals that we are currently discussing with the Commission here in Brussels. There is a new EU industrial strategy which is being developed. There is a new circular economy action plan which is being developed. There is a new EU trade strategy which is being developed. And our role as Euratex is to make sure that the ideas coming from our membership, so coming from the companies, are integrated into those strategies. Very briefly, maybe a little bit more focused on specifically EU-Turkey trade relations, investment relations. You know, what can we do to strengthen, what can we do to, I would say, even intensify those relations? Again, you refer to the customs union already. It is clear that a modernization of the EU-Turkey customs union would greatly benefit that relationship. And I think many of you know that that modernization has been on the table for quite a while. For political reasons, the European Commission and Turkey, European Union and Turkey, I'm sorry, are not engaging in those negotiations, but I think from both sides, Turkey and EU business perspective, we should try to promote and we should try to encourage our political leaders to re-engage in that negotiation. We will see with the upcoming German presidency, second half of this year, presidency of the EU, if there will be some kind of momentum, but certainly we, as Euratex, together with our Turkish members, will certainly try to promote and encourage those negotiations to be resumed, I would say. At the same time, I would encourage EU and Turkish authorities not to wait for this customs union to be to launch negotiations, but to look more specifically, more technically at, let's say, individual problems or irritations which exist today in trade relations between Europe and Turkey. And there we should be honest with each other. From EU perspective, we do hear about certain irritations with customs linked to trade facilitation, which should be addressed by the Turkish authorities, by the Turkish customs authorities. At the same time, I know there is frustration from the Turkish side towards the European Union when it comes to negotiating free trade agreements. So I think there is, how to say, enough to negotiate, there is enough to discuss and clarify bilaterally between the EU and Turkey without necessarily entering into the big customs union negotiation, which once again, I think is has become more of a political discussion rather than a technical trade discussion. So in short, I think Euratex and the entire European textile and clothing sector is trying to prepare to get out of this crisis stronger than before, with a range of instruments that we are negotiating, that we are putting on the table here in Brussels to the benefit of the entire industry. At the same time, specifically for EU-Turkey, I think we should press our authorities in Ankara and here in Brussels to address some of the very specific barriers and technical problems which exist. So to really use this crisis as I would almost say as an excuse to really facilitate trade, to strengthen the integration between EU and Turkey, and to get out of this crisis stronger than before. Voilà, these are just some first comments from the work that Eurotex is doing right now. I will try to be very brief, and I would like then certainly to come back to some of these points more in detail during the discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Valentine, and I think it was very useful introduction regarding the industry itself, and also some changes in EU and the negotiations between EU and Turkey comments. So I hope we can make it deeper during the Q&A session. So now I would like to leave the floor to Mr. Öksüz, who is representing İTİB, and Mr. Öksüz will talk about, obviously from the textile perspective, industry perspective, but mainly focusing also on the exporters' point of view. Thank you. Floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much, Zeynep Hanım, and it was a nice opening speech. Also, thank you. And also Dirk gave a lot of nice information to everybody. And I would like to mention that I worked also at Eurotex as board member about 10 years. I left that due to another friend 2 years ago after my presidency in İTİB. And Eurotex has been a very important organization for Turkish textile industry. Well, I would like to give, first of all, some information about the textile sector and the importance of the sector for Turkish economy. The size of the sector is about more than $80 billion in Turkey, with $26 billion export together with the apparel industry. And we are the second largest exporting industry after automotives. And also Turkey is one of the few countries in the world that is self-sufficient and having fully vertical integration as industry, starting from raw material till the finished garments. And about 1 million employment is very important, and that makes textile sector very strategic for Turkish economy. This, the share of Turkey in the world trade is more than 3%, 3.1%. This is, I believe, very important, the share we get from the world trade. And Turkey is the number 6 in the world, 6th biggest supplier in the world. First is China, second is European Union, and third Bangladesh, fourth Vietnam, and fifth India. So it comes after India. And the share that Turkey is getting from the EU trade is 12.4%, textile and apparel sector. And we are the third largest supplier to European Union. And also Italy is very important partner for Turkish economy. We are the third largest supplier to Italy. Yes, I mean, first I wanted to start with the importance of the textile sector, and then I would like to give my opinion how we should do for the future after actually post-COVID opportunities and the relation between European Union and Turkey. Turkey is very much giving importance for ethical trade, social responsibility, sustainability, innovation, and recycled production. And those parameters are very important for the future, I believe. You know, today we have less demand in textile sector because the people, they are not thinking textile as a first need. And therefore, for some period, to protect the employment and to protect the industry, I think is number one. And if you see many countries, they started and they got some actions, including Turkey, our government, additional taxes, additional tariffs they put on the textile product and also other industries as well, because generally the demand is much lower and every country is responsible to keep its employment. And yeah, if you look at the customs union, as also Dirk mentioned about it, it has to be modernized. It needs to be modernization, and because the tariffs are very low in the European Union, and during this COVID-19, we have seen that how important the textile sector is, especially in medical textiles, you know, and there was a sudden need, you know, and many countries in the European Union, they failed, unfortunately. They depend on China or other Asian countries for these products. So some production, I believe, should also continue in EU, not only in Turkey, but also in EU. And therefore, everything, including FTAs, I think should be rechecked, and we have to work on it again. Also as EU, for example, EU just signed agreement with Vietnam, and there are a lot of FTAs, actually negotiations going on with Indonesia and Asian countries. And textile is unfortunately the first sector, you know, and on the table that the Asian countries ask for to be, you know, tax-free. And we have to be very careful. And therefore, I mean, this strategic sector for Turkey is also very important for EU. So we have to support each other more for this period of time. And as a manufacturing, Turkey has been investing a lot in the machinery as well, because Mr. Alesuki is also in the seminar, and I checked also numbers, investments for the textile industry in Turkey. Italy is number 3 from our import in textile machinery sector. First Germany, second China, then comes Italy. And 2019, we imported about $160 million of machinery, and we exported $68 million. Also, this textile machinery sector is growing in Turkey as well. In 2014, the export was only about $400 million, and today it's more than doubled, $810 million. And our general import was last year $1.1 billion, and 2019 was not so a nice year to invest. If you look at 2018, it's about $2 billion. So there are a lot that we can do more together. We have to support each other together. But we have also a serious problem, unfortunately, as the industry. As Turkish textile manufacturers, we attend many exhibitions in the world, and well, very respected ones, except the one in Italy, Unica. Unfortunately, textile manufacturers are not welcome, Turkish manufacturers, in that exhibition. And it's been more than, I think, 20 years we've been trying to, but always we've been stopped. And also pity, I think, for the garment industry. Mr. Süleyman Orakçıoğlu knows much better that part. I mean, but as textile and raw material sector, we, you know, this is something we have to solve it, because we feel that we are a part of Europe, because in Eurotex, We have, as Dirk said, as 4 representatives, we are in the board, and we have 1 vice president from Turkey. And even though we are not in European Union, we feel that Turkey is a part of Europe. And at least with some numbers of exhibitors, we should be in that UNICA. It would be a good start. Also, that would develop our relations between Italy and Turkey, I believe. And not just for the machinery sector, but also textile sector generally, because we import also a lot of textile goods from Italy as you know, fabrics or finished garments. And we should work much more closely together in the future. And that we have seen after COVID-19 also. And the countries should be more, EU and Turkey should work more closely, and we should support each other more. As textile export, EU is the most important customer for Turkish industry. And the biggest country that we export textile goods are in Germany, #1, Italy, #2, and UK is the 3rd largest country for our market for textile. And of course, we had a big decrease after March 20, after COVID. And fortunately, June figures are slightly better. I mean, much better actually comparing May. And there were a lot of orders that was postponed actually, that the industry produced in March and before March. At least we started shipping that orders. And many investments was planned before March. And actually it was a good start, 2020, for our industry. And January and February were really good. We had good figures. We had increases. And many companies planned investments. But after COVID-19, of course, the companies, I would say they didn't stop, but they postponed their investments. And after a couple of months, I believe that it will restart investments because Turkey will, I believe, benefit in the midterm and long term, especially in the European Union. The buyers and the brands, they would prefer Turkey to import the goods. And this is what we feel. I mean, the traveling is really not easy during this time. And also Turkey is geographically has a lot of advantages, and as quality also we proved ourselves and for many, many years. Thank you very much again. And if there will be other, questions and the second, session, that I can continue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Aksız. So it was a very good introduction and the comments on the EU-Turkey relations and the modernization of customs union, which is not responding to either part's necessities as of today. So we, as DEİK, try to push in our working group on EU and Brexit issues, also the modernization and customs union. So thank you for mentioning that. And of course, thank you mentioning about free trade agreements, etc. So it was really a broader context that you really mentioned important issues. So now I think we have Mr. Zucchi Alex Zucchi, president of Achimit, and saying hello to us from Italy, and who knows also very well Turkish textile industry, and has a good relations with many Turkish textile industry members. So the floor is yours, Mr. Alex, and I would like to hear from you your perspective regarding EU, regarding Turkish-Italian relations, and as well as the future of textile industry as being a prominent sector member. Floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, and good morning to everybody and also the participants. And I'm really glad today to be present, be able to participate to this interesting event, and I really appreciate your invitation. Well, Mr. Van Digen and Mr. Ahmed, they already basically touched a lot of the topics of this panel discussion. Just to make everybody aware that in Italy, obviously I'm talking about from textile manufacturers' point of view, and not really textile, let's say machine manufacturer, this is quite different. We came back in production after the lockdown around May 4th. That means that is already 1.5 months. We are all back, and most of the company, they are fully booked. So despite the lockdown, second half of March and 100% of April, May, and mainly June, we are recovering a lot of the business that has been obviously suspended. And I have to say, from my point of view, that in between the few countries that after cancelling the contract and letter of credit, Turkey more than any other country has complied with their commitment, and we've been really surprised because we did not expect, because the situation was critical for everybody. And I have to say really thank you to all the Turkish customers that despite the situation, they decided to take the machine that has been cancelled end of March and during April. And this is not so common, because only a couple of countries, they comply with their commitment, and one of that is Turkey. So I have really to say thank you to all the Turkish customers. So we are part of the same big gear, no? So if one part of this gear breaks, everything falls down. So we are now in a situation that, yes, 100% of our company, they are working, but we have a major concern for the last quarterly of this year and the first quarterly of the next year, because, you know, we have a visibility of 90, 120 days in machine manufacturing, but in this moment, negotiation is very, very low, very poor. So we are expecting a period very, very critical from October till February, something like that. Mr. Ahmed before has already provided a few data, and I was analyzing this data a few days ago. Italy has been the second supplier in the textile machinery to Turkey till last year, till 2018. But in 2019, the export of Italy to Turkey dropped consistently, talking about 22–23% less, while China has been almost constant, but China became the second supplier of Turkey. I would like to raise up a different, let's say, view about this issue. Italy, Germany, they are the two main suppliers, let's say, from the technological point of view. But China, it is not, fortunately, at this level. So the fact that Turkey is increasing the import of Chinese machinery, it concerns us a little bit, because I think Turkey is not India. Turkey is not Pakistan. Turkey is not Bangladesh. Turkey is at the medium high level, is in the good direction, is improving their capability. I know many of your textile machinery manufacturers. I have to say that in the last 15, 20 years, the improvement that we have noted in Turkey is amazing. So, and this is very positive. That's why I would like to bring to your attention this factor about the import of Chinese machinery. Nothing against the China, the Chinese, even in this moment, Chinese in Italy, they are not so popular. After this virus, you can imagine. But business is business. And then just to recall what Mr. Ahmed said before, I would like to have the chance to talk also with your association. I had a conference last week with a representative of textile machinery manufacturer of Turkey. And this is an important point because, as already anticipated, become a very important business also for Turkey because it's in the direction of almost $1 billion export. So it's a very important part of also for the Turkish economy. So just to, I can suggest something that probably, as Mr. Ahmed said before, we should improve our cooperation. We shouldn't be jealous each other. The cooperation brings always to some benefit, okay? Technology, in Italy, we make big steps, particularly in the last 4 or 5 years with the project of Industry 4.0. And nowadays, most of our company is working in that direction. Already few machinery, they are supplied, ready to be linked to the cloud, to be controlled directly from our factory, to cut drastically the risk of a breakdown. Turkey, for what I know, is not yet at that level, but I think if we have a chance to share each other some knowledge, I'm sure that we are not losing shares of the market, but we are improving worldwide the shares of in this market. So we don't have to think negatively. We have to be positive. Even if the situation is really complex, because as also Mr. Van Degen has pointed out, he's much closer than anybody else to the European community. The major problem that everybody is facing now is the liquidity. Liquidity is a major problem because, you know, if you don't invoice for 2 months, your cash flow basically disappears. And unfortunately, the bureaucracy is slowing down dramatically this kind of opportunity to get from the governments the necessary liquidity. Even the Europe, unfortunately, is also taking too much time. They keep talking, making meetings. You know, we are entrepreneurs. We know how to manage our company, and bureaucracy is not something that we are used to work with. So we would like to get more efficiency, immediate response, but till they are keep talking means that still, even in this moment, we have only to count on our power. So this is difficult, but who is supporting the employee now? They are still the companies. From the government, very, very, very low support. Moreover, Italy, you know, it's not to everybody, has a huge public debt. So they face difficult to get the necessary money to support the industry in this moment. But despite that, you say that 90% of our associates, I'm talking about 300 companies in Italy, as a manufacturer of textile machinery, 90% of that, they are financing the salary of the employee. It's a big effort, and we hope to be paid back for this effort. It's not so simple. there are a lot of talks also in Europe, but the timing is not the one that we expect. I know that now they plan something in July, but to get this financing, they are already talking about next spring. This is not the way. We need the money now, not in 6 months. And our company, honestly, I was surprised. I did not expect. And please consider that almost 65–70% of our company, they are small size company, let's say from 2 to 10 million euro sales. So they are not big company, but despite that, they are supporting the industry. To make any forecast is very difficult, because if we base on the number we actually have in our hands, it's depressing, it's frustrating. But we didn't get yet the second quarterly, because it's gonna close end of June. And in May, and particularly in June, as anticipated before, we recover a lot, because all our company, they are working 100% of their capacity. And during the lockdown, only few, they kept working because they were directly involved for medical staff. But all the other, they completely shut down. I'm also following the situation in Turkey, because we are very close to Turkey, relationship they are very strong. And I know Turkey did not make a real 100% lockdown like in Italy, okay? Particularly if you customers, they kept working. And I wish you that you can recover quickly, because now Italy, despite the information around, the situation is very good. We are already almost 100% free. Let's say infection is very low, talking about 200 people average daily, and they are decreasing. So they are not that bad. The other main point, as who anticipate me, that concern us, that most of the country worldwide, they are late with this epidemic. Because as in Italy, and probably also in Turkey, we are now on a downing curve, the other country did not reach the top in this moment. So since we are part of this big year, how we can expect a short recovery, or let's say a recovery in a short time, while all the other countries still they are fighting with this virus. So if the shops, the big mall in Europe and US, they do not start to reopen, to sell the garment, to sell the stuff, how we can expect the textile company can consider to make new investment purchasing our machinery? And the same also for Turkish textile machinery manufacturer. This is the main question and main concern we have. That's why before I anticipated that the concern is last quarterly and the first quarterly of the next year. This is a big question mark. I would like also to hear maybe from somebody from you what you expect in this period, because you are strictly linked each other. But I'm a positive person, and in this day I was reading a book, My Time, about a famous IndyCar driver, Alex Zanardi. Everybody knows this guy got a big crash years ago and he lost half of the body, the legs, everything. And there is something very interesting. I said, when I wake up after the crash, first I realized that I was alive. But the second, I looked what was still there. I did not watch what I lost. So this should be the philosophy that should drive us in this moment. We have in any case to watch ahead, no doubt. And cooperation and exchange of information in between us become very important. In this way, we can support each other, particularly, with Turkey. Turkey relationship with Italy, the data already provided to you is very strong. Italy is very close. Somebody before mentioned even about exhibition. This year we miss our most important exhibition. And where is this exhibition? It's ITM Istanbul. We miss this exhibition for the Italian manufacturers, and this was the best place where we share the information each other that link Italy and Turkey. Is already being rescheduled for the next year, and you believe or not, 100% of our associates already confirmed to be there. So means that we believe in that. And obviously, the next one will be in Milan, 2023, that is the ITMA, where all the Turkish, they are obviously most welcome. I'm member of the board of ITMA as well, and the last ITMA last year in Barcelona, the Turkish presence increased enormously. And then we are proud about that, because only if we have the chance to confront each other, we can grow up, we can increase. Then digitalization, all these aspects that require a lot of time to be discussed is there. We are capable, we are doing that, and this is just an additional support to grow up in the future. Teşekkürler, thank you.
It was a interesting insight from your side. So I think you have some questions, so I believe that afterwards our distinguished speakers will answer to those questions as well. Yes, we have many issues to elaborate regarding industry in general. So now is Mr. Orakçıoğlu is with us today, and can you share your experience and insights as a business person from the very heart of the sector, and also as a company operating in Europe mainly? What is your also perspective from Turkey looking to Europe, and what are the major problems that the industry is facing? Floor is yours, please.
Thank you, Ms. President. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. Hello, all panelists. I agree with you, all panelists' speech. I am Süleyman Orakçıoğlu, the founder Orka Holding. In addition to my current position at Orka Holding, I have been the president Istanbul Export Apparel Assembly for the past 7 years. I am also founding president of Turkish Brand Association and a current member of Istanbul Chamber Industry. Today, I would like to talk to you about Orka Holding and apparel industry. Under Orka Holding, we have 3 different brands, Damat, Twin, and DS Damat. These 3 brands have 3 different styles. We are menswear company. We manufacture, design, and have both domestic and international retail sales. The sun rises in Australia and sets in South America for us. We are working 24 hours a day. We are operating all over the world. For example, Italy, we have 2 companies with 30 sales points, some of which are coin department stores. The others are direct stores. We import Italian fabrics. Biella region is very important for us, such as Loro Piana, Marzotto, Guabello, Solviati, Marlani. We use the fabrics in our collections and we export them to 82 countries. We can make the corporation our power and market experience with Italian brands for difficult markets. I can easily say that there are many different opportunities for us these markets. Let's combine our powers and work together. Today, very important, this situation. Customer, what is the wants? The customer profile changed a lot. Customer profile changed a lot. The new customer is smarter than yesterday. They explore the world. They know a lot. They want the quality. They want the functionality. They want design, but they want affordable price. They also want luxury. They want affordable luxury. This this solution is this. After the pandemic, the digital era has come. Investing in digital system is very important for our company. We are empowering our online sales and our digital omnichannels. We are preparing to AI and virtual reality technologies to enrich customer experience. Hereby, I like financial information export volume apparel industry. This 2019, our country's total apparel export volume, 2019, $17 billion. $17 billion. We make 69% our export European countries. 69% European countries. Our total export EU countries, $12.2 billion. All total $17 billion. Approximately EU countries, $12 billion. The countries we mainly export to are Germany, Spain, England, Netherlands, France, Iraq, USA, and Italy. In Italy, our total apparel export are $575 million. Our total apparel imports are $119 million. Our fabric and raw material imports $4 million and exports are $600 million. These are figures from 2019. During the pandemic, our global export decreased by apparel sector 26%, decreased 26% between January and May. In the same period, our export to Italy decreased 21%. 21%. Our Italy exports were $200 million and our imports were $40 million. This, in my opinion, digital innovation is very important today. Today, digital innovation is necessary for companies' survival. In my opinion, the EU has a big responsibility. It should give big support to companies' innovation process. And it should give support SMI and entrepreneurs who need funding. This another situation, this free trade agreement. Okay, free trade agreement. But EU is making this third countries agreement, but none included in Turkey, such as Mexico, Vietnam, Ukraine, South Africa. This continuous custom barrier. This we want to free trade and fair is competition. Thank you so much for listening to me.
It was interesting to hear the numbers and the changes in the numbers as well. So now as we have more time, while you were speaking, we were also collecting questions from our distinguished guests. So I tried to organize them in a matter, in a way, in order to direct you easily. So now I would like to address some of these questions shared by our audience. So while they ask, also sometimes they mention the people that they address the question. So I will do the same way. Okay, one of the questions is, as mentioned at the beginning, there is a piled stock due to the increase in demand. So, as also I mentioned, there are big retailers that Turkish companies are working. So what is the recent situation with the cancelled orders? Maybe Mr. Orakçoğlu and Mr. Öksüz can elaborate on this. And what are the opportunities in joint efforts for innovation and R&D between Turkey and the European Union? Maybe Mr. Van Tighem, would you like to answer this question? Because Mr. Alex also, I think Mr. Zucchi also mentioned that about the machinery and technology part. So is there any possibility to possible cooperation between Turkey and Italy, for example? Maybe Mr. Zucchi also can comment on this. Another question to Mr. Zucchi. If I heard you correctly, you mentioned that there will be a difficult period. This question is from my side, between October and February. So what is the reason, I mean, for it? What do you foresee? This is important for everyone. So can you a little bit open that subject for us? And there is also another question for Mr. Zucchi. As Achimit is one of the strongest members of SEMATEX, our audience think that cooperation between TEMSAT, which is Turkey's Association of Textile Machinery Manufacturers, and SEMATEX will be very beneficial. Do you see further opportunities? So I believe that there are 3, 4, 5 questions regarding the technology cooperation between Turkish textile technology manufacturers. This is for Mr. For Eurotex, for Mr. Van Tighem, and for Mr. Zucchi. Another question for Mr. Van Tighem: which EU funds are available to support innovation in textile industry? So these are the questions that there are many, but I just, you know, while you were speaking, gathered them and, you know, rephrase them. So they will cover most of the questions. Thank you. So I think let's start with Mr. Van Tighem about funds and about technology and EU deal and R&D issues.
Right. Thank you. Okay. Thanks for also to the other colleague panelists, interesting presentations, also for me to learn about the situation on the ground in Turkey. Concerning the interest or the value of promoting joint research between EU and Turkey, we as Eurotex certainly support that. And we actually submitted to Commissioner Breton a few weeks ago a recovery strategy paper, which includes a number of proposals. And this joint research is actually one of them. So it certainly fits with what we try to promote here in Brussels. Funds, actually, it's very interesting today. Some of you may know that there is a meeting of the European Council. The heads of state are virtually meeting today to discuss the funding. So to discuss the famous EU recovery program, this 750 billion euro that should be available. Part of that money will be to support innovation and research. How much, it's too soon to say, but it's clear that part of the recovery program of the European Union will go into investment into research and innovation. So if you say, will there be funding available towards support research and innovation the answer is absolutely yes. The challenge for us as a textile and clothing sector is, of course, to make sure that our industry, that our sector is actually can participate, is actually involved in some of these innovation programs. Because obviously, we think it's important to invest in innovation, but many other sectors think the same. So it's about putting together concrete, realistic proposals that fit within the European ambition, innovation in digitalization, innovation into sustainable production techniques, innovation in circularity, innovation in bio-based materials. So we have a number of proposals, again, that we are putting on the table today. But in the end of the day, it will be a competition between our sector and many other sectors as to where the money will be going. And secondly, it is true, commenting on what I think Mr. Suki was saying, the procedures to make those funding available, unfortunately, are quite complex, are quite slow. And I fully appreciate companies need support today. And that is not an easy, how to say, there's no easy solution there. But we certainly, as Eurotex, as a lobby for the entire industry, try to push the European Commission, try to push the member states to make available that funding as quickly as possible and as relevant, as close to the industry as possible. And once again, we have a number of concrete ideas. We call them flagship initiatives, we call them, and we're putting those initiatives on the table to make sure there will be some funding coming into the textile and clothing sector. So the short answer is funding, yes, but how fast and how much, too soon to say.
Sorry. Thank you. I think as Turkey, we should be more proactive also in participating in multilateral project. I don't know how to do. Maybe Mr. Öksüz and Orakçıoğlu can also comment on that afterwards, because yes, there will be funding, as you say, and how much will go to textile is a question mark. But if there will be some availability, of course, these cooperations between Italy, Turkey, and other European countries in the textile industry will benefit also, will be kind of a benefit for Turkish industry. So how to involve and how to participate, it's critical. And I think Mr. Zucchi can comment on the same question, and plus the specific questions about member Sematex and TEMSAT cooperation.
Well, I got the responsible of TEMSAT, I think 10 days ago during another conference, also about this issue. It is not an easy matter to be discussed now, but certainly has a logic, has a certain interest. It's something not so easy to manage because it's quite complicated, because we are 9 associations. I'm in the board also of Sematex as well. And there are many things that should be discussed because, you know, Sematex is also strictly related to ITMA. But I think there is the basement, at least to start a discussion. Just to make a simple example, for what I know, TEMSAT, for instance, associate also company, they are not really textile machinery manufacturer. There are, for instance, some chemical company inside, while Sematex and Asimid and all the other associates, they are pure textile machinery manufacturer. There is the ITMA issue also involved. This is something that eventually we can discuss. Maybe it can be a good beginning, because the argument on which to base an association of TEMSAT inside Sematex is important. We heard the number before. We are talking about almost $1 billion machine made in Turkey, and the exchange of technology will help to improve each other. as I told before, I'm not the guy that is jealous. I'm one that always sustains that cooperation helps everybody to grow up. For instance, just to say something, one point that could be improved in also a reasonable short time is the education. We are talking about digitalization, Industry 4.0, but what does it mean? It means that we need a different skill of the employee. Whatever is basic is not in our interest. So education is a key point. You said that you also study in Italy, Mrs. Zeynep, okay? Why do not consider, imagine that we do already as association, in many countries, we have open technological center in Vietnam, we open in Pakistan, now we are working, we have in India. Why do not consider a kind of cooperation starting from the education? I mean, technical education, because what we need now, and this, believe me, is almost impossible to find, is skilled people to run and control the automation and digitalization of our machinery. We don't need a simple mechanic. Simple mechanic we can find everywhere. Everywhere you can find somebody that can fix a bolt with a tool, very simple. But we need somebody who has a different capability. So we have to raise up the quality of our employee. And the exchange, for instance, of students on the technical side could be a good start, because education is the basement for the future management. This is what we need now. So if we want to raise up the quality of our machinery, our technology, we need good people behind, and good people has to be creative. I'm not really deep inside the Turkish organization is in this field, but in Italy, we are behind. We have a lot to be. Imagine that the industry, okay, forget this dramatic moment, we need around 800,000 people per year, and our school generates 50,000. Just to give you a picture. So if we want to improve both sides, this could be, for instance, now, okay, this is not the case to discuss deeply about that, because it's not a conference based on that, but this should be the first point from where to start. Maybe an exchange on the, let's say, university level, of course, that can improve both sides. This is just an example. Regarding TEMSAT, as I told you, it's something that is not that easy because there are too many things involved. That certainly can be an argument to be brought to the board and to be discussed, obviously based on some, let's say, acceptable and reasonable proposal. And then certainly, if this may happen, it will be something that is going to change, let's say, all the European organization also in terms of exhibition. I mentioned ITM before because ITM, after ITMAN, let's say in the area of Europe, is certainly the second most important exhibition, but no, it's private. That's another point. While ITMA is belong to Sematex, ITM is not belong to TEMSA. It should be something that TEMSA maybe can consider and find a way to bring a proposal that include maybe something more important to make more, let's say, attractive their proposal. From my side, certainly, I will go to talk about that. We just got the board last week. We have a next one, I think, late July or beginning of September, I don't remember. It's something that I can, let's say, refresh the mind of the people over there. But it will be helpful if from TEMSA side, they can already prepare maybe some paper, some proposal that from where we start the discussion. Okay. So I try to be short and brief, and I just make this suggestion, but it will be nice maybe later on we can go deeper in this discussion to see from which other, let's say, sector we can share our knowledge. Because already few of our associates has cooperation with Turkey, even myself, even my company. So, but this kind of cooperation, I want to make clear, should not be based only with the final goal to get cheaper machine from Turkey. No. The goal must be how to grow up, how to improve the technology, because only when we meet each other, we, let's say, put each other in front of the technology, this is the moment where new idea comes, new development can be done. So cannot be only a speculation. Otherwise, as I raised up before, please continue to buy machine from China. Because if you look only to get cheaper machine, this is not what we are interested about. We want to have the best technology, and also the gentleman before, I forgot the name, Mr. I think Suleiman, he said, even in fashion, he said, oh, people who like to get something branded, so means high quality stuff, but at good price. I think also for Mr. Suleiman, it's not so easy if you buy, let's say, from Colombo, from, I don't know, Ermenegildo Zegna stuff, and you want to sell that garment at the price of a Chinese stuff or Bangladeshi stuff. No, you should get, okay, an acceptable price that allow the manufacturer to get the right profit, because we must make profit. We don't have to forget, because without profit, we have not the capital to make future investment. So this must be the common philosophy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zucchi. Yes, you...
President, I would like to answer for stock problem.
Yes, I will just want to comment one thing. Yes, this is important. Of course, you know, as being, you know, as we are talking about reshoring, etc., and then changing the supply chains, maybe Mr. Öksüz and Orakçıoğlu also can comment on that. I think also closer technological cooperations are important. As you know, in Turkey, we have good universities, good engineers. Also, kind of, we are advanced in digitalization. So I am the president of Istanbul Chamber of Industry Assembly. So our members always in our meetings talking that, yes, we need more cooperation, and we have quite strong also textile machinery production in Turkey. But as you said, we should increase, first of all, exchange of know-how, exchange of, you know, education, you know, sending each other people. Of course, for the use of the technology, we need ready available people. This is, I understand that is a common problem from both sides, because I hear a lot also from our members in Istanbul Chamber of Industry, the availability of ready middle management, let's say, in the companies, but also we need you know, R&D centers together. We, for example, in FMCG industry in Turkey, all these diapers, etc., most of them, for example, are developed in Turkey. In chemical, there are such possibilities, and Turkey are really contributing a lot. Also in pharmaceutical, for example, there are good close cooperations in the R&D side. So Turkish engineers are quite valuable, and we have good students here. I think we should start opening up, you know, schools together and R&D centers as well. I think that's a good thing. I hope we invited the embassy of Italy to hear us. They are listening to us. Maybe there will be some projects, you know, also as DEİK, we can be more than happy to contribute to that, but this should increase. Also, I know that there is one problem, maybe Mr. Öksüz and Orakçıoğlu can elaborate this, then maybe you can answer. You know, at the Sematex, you know, our members, we are not members, so the problem is at ITMA, we are not well established and not presented as Turkey as we desire. So we have 160 companies participating to ITMA, and usually they comment, our members comment that they are, you know, our booths where we exhibit are behind the Chinese. So if you really really have a problem about Chinese machinery, then Turkish producers should be, you know, at the heart of the fairs. Usually this is the case in Italy. I know from my own industry as well. We fought quite heavily to get the right places, right holes in the exhibitions, you know, and I think Turkish industry needs to be presented in ITMA much better, you know. So this is a request that was written to me from my personal cellular phone now, so I had to comment and deliver to you this request. Maybe you can comment that.
I'm the person in charge for the next ITMA in Milan 2023, so I'm taking good note.
Yes, please do so. Yes, Mr. Orakçıoğlu, your comment on the other issues, yes.
Thank you so much, my president. I agree with you because Turkish machinery industry companies also want better location in the ITMA. This message came for me. This another problem. I want to comment on the stock problem. In the Turkish sector, current cancelled orders are about $2 billion. The stock problem should be solved with sustainable solution and clear communications. Stock problem led to production problems. Today, it's called stock problem, but tomorrow it will be production problems. Thank you so much.
Ahmet Bey?
Yes, thank you. Well, I have some notes, and first of all, Mr. Alex said about the cancellation orders of the machinery industry, Italian manufacturers. And as Kipash, I bought 75 looms from Italy, from Itamma company. It was before the COVID-19. I mean, we didn't cancel the order, but the manufacturer postponed the delivery because of the COVID. And they postponed 3 months, which we understand, the delivery term. I mean, there could be some companies, of course, and the same thing happens to us, as Mr. Süleyman Orakçıoğlu said. A lot of companies from Europe, they canceled orders of textile and apparel products, unfortunately. And well, Mr. Alex said, and he mentioned about the cooperation, which I believe also. But that cooperation actually requires welcoming each other. I mean, if you want to cooperate, we really have to support each other, both sides. And therefore, I mentioned about Milano Unica exhibition, for example. Okay, exhibitions are today not so attractive. I mean, I'm not talking about today. And I don't know how it will be next year. Hopefully, everything will be well again. But as Turkish manufacturers, we should be participating in. Okay, I'm not asking that we need to be there with 200 companies. It's not the issue. Maybe 10 companies, 20 companies, but we have really very good manufacturers with high quality standards in Turkey. I mean, we deserve that. But if we see that from your side, then of course, the people think differently. And same thing for the machine manufacturers. I really recommend you, and we can act also as if we can participate with you and TEMSAT together. There are a lot of, I think, issues that you can cooperate with Turkish manufacturers, and there will be a lot of benefits coming from the collaboration. And another important thing is Mr. Alex mentioned about the education. It's really very important. And I wanted to give you information about what we did. And that I recommend for all European Union. Textile engineering programs, for example, in Turkey, was very popular in the past. The achievement was really high standards to get into the university to educate textile engineering. But unfortunately, in the last 6-7 years, the demand was lower, and in 2018, only 42% of the capacity was filled. And also the level of actually students was very low. In the past, it was first top 20,000 in Turkey, but now it's 300,000. So we were losing also, you know, the quality. And what we did is, with the textile and apparel exporters associations, the presidents, and also together with the Textile Employers Union Association, we decided to support textile engineering programs. And we give scholarship for the first 20,000, and then 3 levels actually, 20 to 50,000, 50 to 80,000. But it's almost 2 million, you know, students they are applying university in Turkey. So we have a lot of young people. And in 1 year, 42% increased to 92%. 92% of the capacity was filled. And the level of, you know, achievement was much higher. And it was first 80,000 was really half of the capacity was filled with first 80,000. And it's another big money, I mean, for our industry. I mean, it's a big industry. And what we gave is from 150 to 300 euro. I mean, in Turkish, it's 1,000 to 2,000 Turkish lira per month. And the scholarship, also, it's not just a scholarship, but we created the image of industry. I mean, we attracted actually the people, the young generation, that there is a need in textile sector, because unfortunately, the idea, the people were thinking in a different way. Most of the people were thinking, oh, textile sector is, you know, very bad and it's going down. But the reality is not that. I mean, we need textile engineering in Turkey in our industry. So similar thing, I recommend in Italy or other textile countries in European Union, we can share all of our experience with you. That will be, I think, good task to do that. Because human, I mean, they actually qualified people are very important in textile industry for the future. So if we attract young people to the industry, I think we can secure the future. Thank you very much.
Can you also comment on supply chain issue? Maybe that was a little bit, you know, everybody talk about it, but not on the specific manner. I mean, how do you see our post-COVID, you know, supply chain, and do you think Turkey has some pluses, you know, that we can offer?
Yeah, Turkey is one of the few countries in the world it's self-sufficient. I mean, only in the raw material we import cotton, you know, polyester, viscose, the raw materials we are importing, because the industry is very big and our fiber industry is not enough to feed the need in Turkey. But other than that, and there is no problem by importing fibers from all over the world. But the spinning industry, knitting, weaving, dyeing and finishing, they are really we have huge capacities, and we don't depend on import, I would say, generally. Of course, there could be some niche items, that, but if you look at the Far East portion, China portion, it's very small. I mean, only in fibers we import from Far East with big quantities. But other than that, also garment industry is very strong in Turkey. We are really, I think, in our region, Turkey is the only country it's self-sufficient. Gelmedi ama. Ses gelmemişti de önce Zeynep Hanım şimdi geldi.
So we have one last question that arrived afterwards. We have exceeded time, so we have to close in 8 minutes. But which supports? The question is, which supports from the government are expected to be provided ex-textile and garment sector will change dramatically to be more sustainable and organic. So this is a question to all. So it was asked to all panelists. So from Turkish point of view, from European point of view, so to be more sustainable and organic, which supports we need from governments? Can start.
From a European perspective, as I briefly mentioned, at Euratex, we work very much on this aspect, meaning that we have developed a circular strategy for the textile and clothing sector, because, as you know, the European Union is pushing very much for this Green Deal, as you know. What we need to make sure is that initiatives and proposals that are coming on the table actually support the industry, are not just a cost or a burden for the companies. So it's very important to be proactive with proposals that actually support the companies, and in some cases they need financial support. That is clear. For example, we have put on the table the idea of creating recycling hubs, textile recycling hubs for textile waste to collect, reuse, organize the reuse. Putting together such a recycling hub would cost a lot of money. And we are discussing with the European Commission, with Commissioner Breton and his people, okay, if we have such a concept which would be interesting for the industry, which would help the sustainability, but which needs financial support. So we are discussing if such support can be made available as part of this recovery plan. As I said before, this is long discussions, but it's, I can say, constructive discussions. So we are hopeful that there will be some kind of support coming for these type of initiatives. But it's very important that we as an industry come up with ideas and proposals from the sector itself. Because if you do not proactively make these proposals, the risk is that the authorities will make proposals which do not fit within our sector. So it's important to be proactive and to come up with good ideas and look for the support if necessary. So we are certainly working on that at the level of Euratex.
Who else would like to comment on this issue?
Well, sustainability is very important, and this is the future for our industry. And in Turkey, many companies, they have already started and to structure their companies for sustainable production, including recycling, including environment, and I think in the future it will be more important as well, recycled products, as Dirk said. And well, we recommend all our members to work on sustainability. Also, this is also a responsibility to the nature, but on the other hand, to survive in the industry is also very much needed to be sustainable.
Thank you.
Last.
Please.
My president, I would like to say, we should not consume when producing. We should focus on recycling and sustainable solutions. We should respect our environment. Thank you so much.
Zeynep Hanım, ses gelmiyor ama mikrofon kapalı galiba.
I said this is an important subject which both sides are aligning, the sustainability issue, and this is a subject that where we can really focus and work together. So I think you mentioned the importance, and the Eurotex is always is one of the flagship projects on the agenda. So there should be more, I think, discussions on that, and this will help also for Italy, because the sustainability is an issue, and there are good environmental companies that can provide technology. So it's a win-win area where we can focus more, and in this respect, I think textile industry in Turkey will gain more advantage vis-a-vis Asia. So I think this is something. So thank you for all for participating. It was really interesting. I learned myself, being someone not from the industry, a lot, and I really value each of your comments. As I recap, I would like to share some takeaways that I have noted while you were speaking. Mr. Van Tighem told us that the impact of COVID-19 has been very negative on textile sector, with minus 40 to 70% decrease in sales and turnover. To support the industry, he said that they have launched liquidity measures and also instruments to restore demand. In the long term, the objective of Eurotex is to make sure that the industry gains competitiveness. So mainly long-term and short-term measures has to be taken. Of course, short-term are mainly relies on the financial aids, etc., but long term are different. So in this sense, the sector needs to invest in innovation, digitalization, sustainability, as we lastly discussed, and attract young talent, which also mentioned by Alex Zucchi. So I see on sustainability and education programs as an area where we can really work together. And on Turkey-EU industrial cooperation, modernization of customs union is a must from our point of view and from Eurotex point of view as well. Mr. Öksüz told that with his very valuable comments, Turkey's textile sector with $62 billion export volume is the second largest exporter and is a self-sufficient industry. Although affected negatively by COVID-19, it is a good to hear that the exports are rebounding in June, inshallah, as we say. On Turkey-EU cooperation, Mr. Öksüz highlighted the need for Turkey's inclusion to the FTAs that the EU signs with the third countries. Also, this is important because of traffic already will be created by the old customs union agreement. So although Turkey is not a member of the EU, we are part of Europe, and as a textile industry, they see even more being part of Europe with such a close relationship with the industry. Mr. Zucchi told us important issues regarding supply chains. Turkey has the potential to replace the import of Chinese machinery, so we have to focus on that. It is also important to remember that cooperation brings benefit, so we should really always be open for cooperation, and especially, as he mentioned, from the technological R&D cooperation and education cooperation in order to support Italian machinery, also to upgrade Turkish textile technology industry. And Mr. Orakçıoğlu mentioned that their companies experienced 21% decrease in exports to Italy during the pandemic, but he highlighted the importance of innovation for the sector and inclusion of Turkey's integration to EU, to FTAs, to keep the industry competitiveness. So I totally believe that we had an insightful and thought-provoking discussion. So I noted here that Mr. Zucchi took a note about participation of Turkish machinery producers to 2023 in a very good place, and to support this idea within the industry. So I also thank you for his comment on that. I really thank all participants, our listeners from DEİK, Istanbul Chamber of Industry, team, İTİB, TÜSİAD, Italy Network, and İÇE, and from İKV, who is supporting Turkey's integration to EU, and many more sectoral institutions. So I believe it was a useful and insightful discussion. Also, I extend my heartfelt gratitude to our distinguished speakers for sharing their expertise. I hope to meet in another textile gathering in future. I hope that this period between October and February will not happen, so we'll continue as we resume as of today in Europe, and the markets will be open. So maybe next time we can speak about how digitalization will work on textile industry, including also consumers' needs. So thank you for all, and I really appreciate your valuable time, and hoping to see you in the next DEİK EU Talk meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So I conclude the meeting and leave the meeting. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.